Rosa Vega is at her desk by 7:45, which is 45 minutes before the building officially opens and 90 minutes before the executive floor fills with the kind of people who walk past her station without looking up from their phones. And she knows by 8:17, before the theft has been reported, before the building security team has been notified, before anyone on the 42nd floor of Meridian Dynamics has said the words, "Missing schematics," out loud. Exactly. Who took the Calder Project design files? She knows because she was there when the person walked in, and she noticed three things that the person did not realize anyone was noticing, because the person, like almost everyone in this building, had long ago stopped factoring Rosa Vega into their threat calculations. She is 51 years old, has worked at the front desk of Meridian Dynamics for 3 years, and is invisible in the specific way that front desk staff are invisible in corporate buildings. Omnipresent, unremarkable, furniture that greets you and gives you a visitor badge and calls up to your contact and does not, the implicit social contract of the lobby suggests, remember or evaluate or retain anything it witnesses. Rosa Vega retains everything she witnesses. This is a professional habit so deep that it has long since stopped being a conscious act and become something closer to a biological function. The specific, automatic cataloging of detail that her 14 years with the Chicago Police Department's Major Crimes Unit built into her in the way that surgical training builds certain patterns of attention into surgeons that persist long after they stop operating. She left the department at 44, not because she stopped being good at it. She was, by the assessment of her lieutenant and the closure rate of her caseload, one of the best investigators the unit had produced in a decade. She left because the work, over 14 years, had cost her a marriage, 2 close friendships, and a specific kind of continuous low-level faith in human behavior that allows a person to move through their daily life without calculating threat assessments. She needed, her therapist had said with the careful understatement of someone delivering a necessary truth, to stop being a detective for a while. She had taken the receptionist position at Meridian Dynamics 3 years ago because it paid adequately, required nothing from her in the way of emotional investment, and placed her in a position where she could observe people all day without being responsible for what she observed. She had, over 3 years, observed quite a lot. At 6:58 a.m., 14 minutes before Rosa's own arrival, a man named Curtis Hale, Meridian Dynamics Director of Strategic Partnerships, 43 years old, someone Rosa has watched enter this building 312 times across 3 years, entered through the building's side entrance using his executive access card. Rosa knows this because the side entrance access log is one of 12 data feeds that display on the secondary monitor at her station, a monitor that the building's facilities manager installed 2 years ago and that nobody on the executive floor has ever once commented on, because the monitor is at the front desk and the front desk is, in the social geography of Meridian Dynamics, scenery. At 7:03, Curtis Hale exits the elevator on 42. He is carrying a briefcase he did not have when he entered. He walks with the specific directional purpose of someone who knows exactly where they're going, not to his own office on 39, but to the secured access point outside the Calder Project lab. He pauses. Rosa watches him pause. She has watched 312 people use the building's secured access points across 3 years, and Curtis Hale, who uses the 39th floor secure lab 3 to 4 times a week, is a habitual swiper. He does not pause. He pauses for 4 seconds. Then he reaches into his jacket pocket with his right hand, not his access card hand, which is his left, and produces a small card that is not his standard Meridian Idaho card. It is thinner. It is a different color in the camera's color rendering. He swipes it at 7:04. The door opens. He is inside for 11 minutes. He exits at 7:15, briefcase in the same position, walking with the same directional purpose, back to the elevator. Rosa watches this. She says nothing. She continues reviewing the access logs. She notes the time, 7:16, when she becomes certain. At 8:17, the Calder Project Lab's lead engineer reports to building security that the project's primary design schematic files are missing from the secure server. The security team begins its notification cascade. Rosa listens to the notifications arrive at her desk intercom with the specific comm of someone who has already completed the investigation they are being asked to begin. To understand why Rosa Vega says nothing at 8:17 and nothing at 9:30 when the building's head of security, a man named Gerald Parks, sweeps through the lobby asking if she noticed anything unusual this morning. You have to understand what 14 years of detective work teaches a person about the difference between knowing something and proving it, and about the specific, costly difference between the two. She had learned this difference on her third major case, 21 years ago, a financial fraud investigation where she had known, with complete certainty born from 3 months of careful surveillance and document analysis, exactly what had happened and who had done it, and had moved before the evidentiary foundation was airtight, because the pressure to close was intense, and because she had been 30, and at 30, she had not yet fully understood the institutional infrastructure that wealth and position can assemble between an accusation and a consequence. The case had not held. Not because she was wrong. She was right, and everyone involved had known she was right. But because being right and being provable are two different conditions, and the condition that matters in a legal proceeding is not the first one. She had learned from that. She had learned to wait. The Calder Project is Meridian Dynamics' most significant development initiative in a decade, a propulsion system design representing somewhere between $800 million and $1.2 billion in projected revenue, a number that Rosa knows because executives discuss remarkable things in lobbies when they are focused on their phones and the person behind the desk is scenery. She has known about the Calder Project for 9 months. She has also known for 4 months that something was wrong. Not with the project itself. With Curtis Hale. She began noticing Curtis Hale specifically in November, when his building access pattern changed. 3 early arrivals before 8 a.m. in 1 week, which had not occurred previously in a 7-month review period. Increased access to floors above his designated level. Twice in November, he arrived with a briefcase he didn't have on departure, which interested Rosa because people who work in secure facilities have specific habits about what they carry in versus out, and those habits are almost never arbitrary. Over 4 months, she had built a picture. The picture included a car she had not seen before in the executive parking structure, a dark blue sedan with no plates, present on 2 of the 3 early arrival days. A man she did not recognize, meeting Curtis Hale for coffee at the lobby's cafe, reviewing something on a tablet that Curtis angled away from other patrons. A phone call Curtis took in the lobby, walking toward the exit, lowering his voice, saying, "Can't move it before Q1. They changed the security protocol after the November audit." That was in January. At 10:45 a.m., 2 hours and 28 minutes after Gerald Parks swept through the lobby and Rosa said nothing useful to him, she makes a phone call on her personal cell phone during her 15-minute break, sitting in the building's 3rd-floor women's restroom, the one that the executive floor staff rarely use because it requires a separate elevator trip, because it is the only location in the building that has no security cameras. She knows this because she mapped the building's camera coverage in her first month as a habit. The phone rings twice. A man answers. Vega. It's been a while. Marcus, she says. Are you still with the FBI's Economic Espionage Unit? A pause. I'm unit chief now. Why? Because I work the front desk at Meridian Dynamics, and the Calder Project schematics were stolen this morning, and I know who did it, and I know the transaction structure he's been building for at least 4 months, and I need to talk to someone who can move on this before the handoff happens. Another pause. Longer. How good is your read? Marcus says. I watched him go into the secured lab at 7:03 this morning with an access card that wasn't his and exit 11 minutes later, Rosa says. I have 4 months of behavioral documentation on my personal drive, cross-referenced against the building's access logs, which I have legally reviewed in my role as front desk staff. I have a physical description of a contact I've observed him meet with twice in this building. I have a partial plate number on a vehicle associated with at least 2 of his anomalous access incidents. She pauses. How good is my read, Marcus? Silence. Then, where are you? 3rd floor women's restroom, Meridian Dynamics. No cameras. A sound that is not quite a laugh. Some things don't change, he says. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Marcus Webb is 54, has been with the FBI's Economic Espionage Unit for 19 years, and was Rosa Vega's partner at the Chicago PD's Major Crimes Unit for 4 of her 14 years, specifically years 7 through 11, which Rosa privately considers the 4 years she was best of the work, because Marcus was the only partner she had who could keep up with the way her mind moved through a problem and who challenged her theories rather than confirming them. He arrives at 11:27, which is 7 minutes ahead of his stated 40-minute estimate, which Rosa notes without mentioning. He sits across from her at a cafe table in the building's ground floor, and he reads through the printed copy of her documentation for 19 minutes. She drinks coffee. She watches the lobby. You've been doing this for 4 months, he says. Not a question. I noticed the pattern in November, she says. I wasn't certain until January. I've been documenting since January. From the front desk. From the front desk. Marcus looks at the documentation. The partial plate. How partial? First 4 characters and state. Illinois. I ran it through a contact at the DMV. I know that's gray area, but I have the relationship from department days, and I didn't use it for enforcement. I used it to confirm the vehicle wasn't registered to anyone with a known Meridian Dynamics affiliation. And it came back to a shell company incorporated in Delaware 8 months ago. No other registered vehicles, no other assets. Marcus is quiet for a moment. The shell company being 8 months old puts its incorporation 4 months before the pattern change you noticed. 3 months before, Rosa says. The pattern change was November. The shell company incorporation was August, which means someone was planning this in August. Someone was planning this in August, Rosa confirms. What Rosa has not told Marcus Webb, not because she is withholding it, but because she has been waiting to be certain, and certainty arrived 3 days ago, is that Curtis Hale is not the most important discovery she made across 4 months of watching. Curtis Hale is the instrument. What she found while running the vehicle on February 3rd and pulling the corporate registration thread on the Delaware shell and following that thread backward through the public record is that the shell company's beneficial ownership, traced through 2 additional layers of Delaware and Wyoming LLCs, connects to a holding entity that is itself connected through board membership and investment relationships documented in public SEC filings to a member of Meridian Dynamics' own board of directors, not Curtis Hale's handler, not a corporate competitor, a board member. The board member's name is Franklin Osei. He has served on Meridian Dynamics board for 6 years. He sits on the governance and audit committees. He is, by Meridian Dynamics' own public disclosure, a person of significant institutional trust. He is also, Rosa has concluded with the specific cold certainty that follows weeks of careful evidentiary construction, the architect of what Curtis Hale was executing this morning. Not a rogue employee stealing schematics for personal gain, but a coordinated theft orchestrated from inside the institution's own governance structure. Rosa had not told Marcus this on the phone because the phone was not secure and because the phone call was establishing whether Marcus was the right person for this. She had confirmed it in 19 minutes of watching him read. When Marcus stands to leave, Rosa says, "Marcus." She slides a sealed envelope across the table. "Don't open it here. There's a name in it. The name changes the nature of what you're looking at." "How long have you had this?" 3 days. "I've been making sure." "Are you sure?" Rosa thinks about 14 years. "Yes," she says. "I'm sure." Marcus takes the envelope. Rosa Vega does not leave the building that evening at 5 p.m. the way she normally does, because at 4:47, Marcus Webb texts her a single word, "Confirmed." She texts back, "All of it?" He texts, "All of it. We need you on site tomorrow. FBI field office, 7 a.m. Formal statement." She sits at her desk for the remaining 8 minutes of her shift, watching the lobby with the same specific attention she has given it for 3 years. At 5 p.m., she logs out of the front desk system. She puts on her coat. She picks up her bag. Gerald Parks is at the elevator bank. "Still nothing from your end?" he says. "About this morning?" Rosa considers this for exactly as long as it takes her to determine that the investigation is sufficiently advanced that a narrow disclosure will not compromise it. "Gerald," she says, "the person you're looking for came in through the side entrance at 6:58 this morning. They were on 42 between 7:03 and 7:15. Your access card logs will confirm this. The car they used to enter the lab is not in your system. You'll need to look at your provisioning records for any access credentials issued in the last 8 months that didn't go through standard HR onboarding." She pauses. "That's enough to orient your internal review. The rest of it is going to be handled by people whose jurisdiction is larger than this building." Gerald Parks stares at her. "How do you know that?" he says. Rosa considers how to answer this. "I watch the monitors," she says. "I've always watched the monitors." She gets in the elevator. She goes home. She sleeps better than she has slept in 4 months. Curtis Hale is arrested on the following morning, before he reaches the handoff location that the FBI's Economic Espionage Unit had identified through a combination of Rosa's documentation and 48 hours of surveillance on the shell company's registered address. The arrest is made at a parking structure in the West Loop at 7:22 a.m., 3 blocks from a private equity firm that Rosa had not known about, but that Marcus's unit had connected to Franklin Osei's beneficial ownership chain within 24 hours of opening the sealed envelope. Franklin Osei is served with a federal grand jury subpoena at 9:45 a.m. while sitting in a governance committee meeting at Meridian Dynamics downtown offices. Rosa learns about this from a text from Marcus at 10:12. She reads it at the front desk. She is in the middle of signing in a visitor from the 4th floor. She finishes signing in the visitor. She hands him his badge. She says, 11th floor, Mr. Sandoval. Andrea's assistant will meet you at the elevator. Mr. Sandoval thanks her without making eye contact and walks to the elevator. Rosa watches him go. Then she opens a desk drawer and removes a small notebook. Not a professional evidence log, just a personal notebook, the kind she has carried since she was 26 years old. She makes a brief entry. She records the date and time. She writes, "Case closed. Both subjects. Front desk, 11 years later, still works." At 11:45, Meridian Dynamics head of HR, a woman named Patricia Souza, appears at the front desk with the specific expression of someone who has just been given information that has reorganized their understanding of recent events. "Rosa," she says, which is the first time anyone from HR has used Rosa's first name in 3 years. "I've been asked to speak with you by the company's general counsel. It's about this morning." "I know," Rosa says. "I have some time now, if you'd like to sit down." They sit down. Patricia Souza, who has managed the HR function of a major technology firm for 9 years, and who is not easily surprised, spends the next 40 minutes being surprised, not by what Rosa did, but by the specific, contained, unhurried precision with which Rosa describes it. When Rosa finishes, Patricia is quiet for a moment. "You've been at the front desk for 3 years, she says. "Yes," Rosa says. "And before that, Chicago Police Department. Major crimes. 14 years. Another silence. "I feel like I should ask," Patricia says, "whether you've been happy here." Rosa considers this question, not the answer, which she knows, but the specific quality of consideration it deserves. "I came here because I needed the work to be simpler," she says. "It was simpler mostly. This morning was an exception." She pauses. "But I'll be honest with you. This morning was the first time in 3 years that I felt entirely like myself." Patricia Souza looks at her for a long moment. Then she says, "I'd like to schedule a follow-up meeting with you and our head of corporate security. Not Gerald Parks, above Gerald Parks. Would that be something you'd be open to?" Rosa looks at the lobby. "Yes," she says. "I'd be open to that." 7 months later, Rosa Vega is the director of Insider Threat Intelligence at Meridian Dynamics, a role that did not exist before this morning and that was built in 6 weeks of careful negotiation between Meridian Dynamics General Counsel and its Chief Security Officer and the FBI's Economic Espionage Unit, specifically around what Rosa's 3 years of front desk observation had demonstrated was possible when you place the right kind of attention in the right kind of position. She no longer sits at the front desk. She has an office on the 31st floor with a desk that faces the door and a window that faces the building's parking structure, which she had specifically requested because old habits are old habits. The front desk is staffed by a woman named Diane, 32, who is new and who Rosa has spoken to 3 times in her first month. Not to tell her to be a detective, but to tell her specific things about what the front desk can see that no other position in the building can see, and about the value of the access logs on the secondary monitor, and about the specific social invisibility of the front desk position, which is a disadvantage in some contexts and a significant operational advantage in others. Diane had listened with the specific quality of attention of someone being told something unexpected about the job they thought they understood. "So you're saying," Diane had said, "that the front desk is actually a surveillance position," Rosa had said, "the best one in the building." The lesson was not about institutional vigilance. The lesson was not about security protocols. The lesson was simpler and more specific and considerably less comfortable for an institution to state plainly. That the people who see the most are very often the ones nobody thinks to look at, and that the specific social blindness of treating certain people as furniture, as scenery, as infrastructure, as visible but unregistered presences in the spaces where important things happen, is not merely an indignity to those people. It is, when those people happen to know what to look for, a significant operational vulnerability. Rosa Vega spent 3 years at a front desk in a building full of people who never once wondered what she might be noticing. She had noticed everything. Curtis Hale was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution. Franklin Osei was convicted on 6 counts and sentenced to 11 years. The Calder Project schematics were recovered intact from Curtis Hale's briefcase at the time of his arrest. Marcus Webb sent Rosa a text the day the verdict came in. It said, "You should have come back sooner." She sent back, "I came back when I was ready." Rosa's notebook from the front desk, the one with the entry dated the morning of the theft, was entered into evidence at Franklin Osei's trial. It was the exhibit the prosecutor spent the longest time on. Rosa had been keeping notebooks like it since she was 26 years old. She still is.